Hello everybody and welcome to Modern Barber Upskills Live. I'm Charlotte Grant West, I'm the editor of Modern Barber, and today I'm joined by qualified therapist Louise Wood and barber Bethan Brennan. Hi guys.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Louise is going to be joining us to give some guidance, offer some assistance, and hopefully answer your questions about all things mental health and well-being. And Bethan's going to be giving a barber's perspective on all things mental health and well-being, and kind of speaking a little bit about how the pandemic has affected her personally. It's so good to see you guys.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome. So Louise, if you don't know Louise, people that are watching, she is the director of LWPR, who are PR specialists for the hair industry. But I recently found out she's got a little side hustle as a therapist. So I kind of want to find out, firstly, more about that. How did you come to be a therapist? Was it before, after, or during your career as a hair PR?
Well, it was actually in the last 8 years. Yeah, I've always been really interested in psychology, and did it at sort of many decades ago for A level, and kind of wished I'd done it at that point. Had wished I did. And then as time went on, I thought, well, why don't I do it now? So I did a BA in counselling and psychotherapy, which I started in 2014. So sort of fairly recently qualified in a sense. So really been practicing since 2014 and or 2015 rather. And I worked in an agency in a voluntary capacity in a local agency in our town. So yeah, I love it. Very different skills, but I love doing it.
Amazing. And Bethan, kind of throughout the pandemic and lockdown, and I know we've chatted quite a bit on social media, you've been really wonderfully honest about your mental health, and I know we've kind of chatted about this. Can you kind of explain to people watching today why mental health is a subject that you're so passionate about?
It's mainly because, well, everyone knows it affects 1 in 4 people now, which I don't know about anyone else, but I personally think it's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
I think everyone kind of has the same feeling now that it's more in the known and everyone is affected by it. But it's always been something that I've been passionate about from like childhood. I wanted to go into mental health nursing and stuff. It all fell through. I'd landed in the hair industry, and it's a good place to help make people be aware, but also support each other. Whilst being in the industry, it kind of goes hand in hand, mental health and barber and hairdressing and beauty, because we're such a people-facing like industry.
Absolutely. And kind of touching on that point, you work at Cresswell Barber Company, and that's is it Southampton? Have I got that?
Yeah, we're in Southampton.
And so obviously you've been in national lockdown this time round. And what's been the hardest thing as a barber for you, coming from that kind of what seems like a really close-knit kind of barber family at Cresswell?
Kind of, I guess, like feeling like you've lost your identity, if that makes any sense. Because we are, as cliche as it sounds, we are a family at Cresswell's. Like we all keep in touch with each other and things like that. But we're also really close with our customers, like I'm sure a lot of people within the industry are. And to lose that kind of connection between everyone, including the staff, it is really disheartening. But we keep in contact and we try our best. But that's probably the hardest part, is losing your identity.
Yeah. And Louise, is that obviously your experience with hair professionals, and you talk to hairdressers and barbers all day with your job at LWPR, is this kind of something that you found they're all struggling with as well? And as your role as a therapist, what kind of tips would you have for them? I know it's quite a broad question and everyone's different, but any kind of general things that people can be doing right now?
Yeah, I think the theme that Megan just touched on there of sort of loss of identity, and also at the beginning of what you said was kind of like that sense of, probably underneath that sense of aloneness, sort of you've been part of a hubbub in a big group, and then suddenly you're kind of functioning outside of that satellite where you were very much, you know, part of the family, and it feels like we're all, you know, trying to find a way to keep connected, but actually it's different. And I think people are very much experiencing that. And the other key emotion that really has come up in a very big way, which I think almost everybody listening will identify with, is anxiety around that. You know, it's like, who am I and what does it mean? Have I lost myself? Will I find myself? What's going to happen? And I think a lot of those questions, they start in one place and then they lead on to lots of other, you know, important questions to ask, actually, because I think what we're faced with is a process of change. And, you know, an external event like the pandemic is easy in a way to describe. You know, we know what is going on in our head, we know what is going on, but the internal event of our feelings and our internal response to it, which, as you say, will be different for everybody, is much less easy to describe, because it's a very personal thing, and it'll be vested in your coping mechanisms, and all the other responses that you have will have their feet stood into your childhood and your experiences and the way you manage stuff. And an extreme external event, pandemic, will exponentiate those feelings. And what I think is this is very long-winded, I realise, actually, probably slightly going off topic, but it kind of, one thing leads to the other, to the other, to the other. And I think what we have now is time. We do have time, and being alone and feeling that sense of slight isolation or anxiety, this is the very time to step into the really difficult thing, which is to face the difficulty. And all of the research points to those people who face the difficulty and find a way to adapt, because we don't want to adapt to change. Sometimes a change like this it's like we want to resist it, but actually that is the very thing that will harm your progress and harm your growth. And if there's a way that you can use that time and bend into the difficult internal processes that are going on and understand them a bit more and understand the why, I think then there's a chance for that growth and change, and that might leave you in a place that actually is stronger, ironically, than you were before. But it's a hard place in the middle. We call it a fertile void in psychotherapy. It's the place of unknowing, and that's a really difficult place to be, but it's a place where change happens.
Amazing. I love that analogy. What was it? Fertile void.
Fertile void, yeah.
I'm going to be using that. And Louise, when we're kind of talking about barbershop owners, they're in quite a difficult position because they're not only stressed about their business and their financial situation, but the well-being of their staff too. Have you got any suggestions, particularly for barbershop owners, on easing that burden and any practical ways that they can help be there not physically for their staff?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the way that barbershop owners and leaders and people in those sort of management positions can be there, if they can get right with themselves first. I think to help somebody else, you've got to look after yourself first, because it's that thing of, you don't want to hold the hand of the person who jumps in the river with you. You want to hold the hand of the person who's got their feet on the bank, you know. So actually be firm on the bank yourself, and then go, actually, how are you doing? And I think that way you can ask an open question. It's like, what do you need from me? I think those questions are really important questions, because to guess what somebody needs is going down the wrong avenue. We don't know what each individual needs. I mean, I have a team of 10 people I work with. Well, each one will have a different response and a different need. So I think that question of, is there anything you need from me? How could I help you? Is there anything you'd like to talk through? You know, I'm here for you if you want me. It's offering yourself, and then they have to meet you in the middle. You know, to project onto somebody how they might be feeling would be inadvisable, I would say, because actually we will all have different, and actually that's kind of annoying if people assume you're a certain way. It's like, well, actually, if you ask me, I will tell you. And I always think that's a really compelling thing. It's like, don't tell me how I should feel, ask me how I am, ask me my story, ask me. And I think then listen. You know, if you're going to ask that question, then listen to what's said. And you've got to listen really attentively and really hear what they say. Because if you're thinking about what you're going to say next to the thing that the person's talking about, I mean, we've all had that when you've been talking to somebody and you think, you're not listening. I know you're thinking of the next thing you're going to say. And that just closes people down. So I think the best thing you can do is offer to be in it with somebody. And that's yeah.
Amazing. Bethan, would you kind of respond to anything that Louise has just said in terms of creating a sportive atmosphere from the perspective of someone working in a barbershop, not necessarily the owner?
I definitely agree with you can't help someone else if you're not okay yourself. So I manage Cresswell Barber Co, as well as working in there. I'm very, very close with Natalie, the owner. And we kind of have this unspoken word that we will fix ourselves separately but together, if that makes sense. So when I'm having a hard time, she supports the team, and when she's having a hard time, I support the team.
Nice.
And I know recently I've been AWOL. I've not been helping and supporting the team as much as I'd like to, because I've been struggling with things myself. But I dip in and help where I can and kind of check in on people. But I definitely agree with Louise that you want to be grounded yourself before you try and help and support anyone else. And if you are having that hard time, make sure you do reach out to that support person that you have within your team.
Amazing. Very wise words there from both of you. Louise, back to you now. Lots of industries and people from all walks of life are being affected by the pandemic, of course, and it's not exclusive to hair and barbering. But why do you think specifically barbers and those in the hair industry are being so greatly affected by mental health issues right now? I mean, we've seen it all across social media, the sad death of people that we've known and loved in the barbering industry. Can you speak a little bit about this subject?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a little bit actually in the last little while, and this, you know, this isn't going to be all correct what I'm going to say, but my idea is that in the working life of hairdressers and barbers, they fill their time with being there for other people. So the client's needs, the team needs, and I wonder if their own care has been totally put on the back burner. I think it's so much easier to fix somebody else. It's so much easier to spot what's going on with somebody else, the client with her divorce or you know, child that's ill or worse. And that becomes almost, you live their trauma and their life difficulties almost too much in a way. And I think it's camouflage possibly for your own. And I think we can all be, I mean, part of the reason I went into counselling is because I was that person. I'm like, you know, help, somebody asks for help, I'll be there. And actually I've really learned to kind of like, who is that for? Who is that helpfulness for? Is that really for them, or was that really just make me feel good? And that sounds quite harsh, but I think that comes into the self-knowledge. It's like, it makes me feel good to help other people, and that's fine, that's nothing wrong with that. But actually if that becomes too big, it stops you looking out for yourself, and I wonder if that's why. And also I think people have been given permission to talk about mental health, and I think that's the other really important point. It's like physical health. If everyone has mental health, you know, it's about it. Why wouldn't we talk about it in the same way we talk about physical well-being? And I think it's becoming a really invitational topic, which is, you know, like you guys putting this sort of thing on is amazing. It gives people the permission to go, yeah, I want to join in this conversation. I've been struggling.
Brilliant. And Bethan, during this lockdown, have you kind of taken on any little tips or hacks for easing any anxiety that you might be feeling? I know we were chatting about jigsaws just before we started. That helps me.
I think I have taken on everything possible. So like we said, jigsaws, just hobbies and things. I'm under strict instructions from a fellow barber, Sean, to discuss the fact that I've started painting little rocks and hiding them around. He made a point of saying, "Can you talk about them?" But yeah, just
tell me more.
Oh, just rocks and just painting things on them and then just hiding them around places to try and brighten other people's day.
Oh my gosh, Bethan, that's so lovely.
But yeah, hobbies. I've got back into knitting, jigsaws, like we said. I started using a couple of apps as well to help with my anxiety and things. One called 7 Cups, which is like a free talking therapy. And a new one called Breathwork, which basically just tells you when to inhale and exhale. So it's good for if you do start having panic breath and things like that, or if you're struggling to sleep as well. It helps me to go to sleep at night.
Oh, amazing. That sounds really good. So 7 Cups and
Breathwork.
Breathwork. Oh, definitely. I'm kind of making a mental note of those. So Louise, over to you about another issue that kind of barbers are facing, and that's the loss of contact with their clients. Interestingly, Bethan seems to be kind of channeling, well, what it seems like is Bethan's channeling that wonderful, like, brightening up someone's day by painting rocks. And I know we're kind of like laughing about it, but that seems like a brilliant example of someone taking kind of bringing magic to a client's life and
absolutely
being able to do it during lockdown. Do you think it's kind of acceptable to be reaching out to clients during this phase of lockdown? And do you think it's kind of beneficial for both barber and client, or does it sort of depend on the relationship that's existing there already?
Yeah, I think it's several things. I think obviously if you've got a good enough relationship where it's an easy reach, then that's kind of like, why not? I think it gives us an opportunity to build relationship, and I think you need to go tentatively with that. Some people might find that, that's, maybe a boundary issue for some people. It's like, well, what are you doing? I don't, you're not my friend. And but I think if you can find a way to just reach out from your business to say, and I know a lot of people are doing that. It's just, here's a bit of our news and how are you doing? We just want to check in with you. This is, if people want to talk, they will. I mean, I reached out to somebody not very long ago who had a bereavement, and we have a working relationship, but actually, it's sort of, I felt confident enough to think, I think that will be okay. But I just rang to say, oh, I've just been thinking about you, and I just thought I'd check in with you. How are you doing? And that wasn't kind of like, tell me about your process, but actually it unlocked that. And in fact, that was perfect timing, and they did want to talk about it. But had they just gone, oh, I'm absolutely fine, thanks for ringing, it would have been a really short conversation. There would have been no harm in that.
Yeah,
I think there would have been good in that, and there's, the other outcome was equally good. So I think as long as you don't have a big expectation of what you require from that call, and that it is a check-in, and I think then why not? Yes.
And Bethan, have you kept in contact with any of your clients during this lockdown?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It depends on the relationship you've got with the clients. I keep in contact with quite a lot of mine. I get on with my clients really, really well. But I don't just limit that to my younger clientele. I've got a lot of clients who are young lads, but there's one little old guy who comes in, and he was booked in for the 27th of January or something like that, for his birthday, and he doesn't really have any family or anything, so I gave him a little phone call, and it's not necessarily, like Louise says, not going, how are you, to anyone. It's just saying, like, just miss you, mate, hope you're okay. But it's also mindful of knowing that everyone's affected by this lockdown, and it's not necessarily people just like ourselves who can't physically go to work. It's also the people who are still having to go to work, and and are missing out on the time of being at home with their loved ones, and are worried about going to shops and going into their offices and things like that where they have to go to work. So it's also remembering it's not just people like us who are necessarily stuck inside who are going a bit mad. It's also people who are having to continuously work and can't get any time off.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make, actually.
Yeah.
People love to be remembered, don't they, Bethan? What you're just saying is like checking.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like, oh, you just popped into my head. I was just thinking today, you know, it might be really difficult for you doing your homeschooling with your kids. Hope all's well. You know, it's just like, I know something about you that I know probably is quite difficult. I'm going to offer it out, up to them.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. I went to a training day a couple of years ago with a different company that I worked for, and it was hairdresser based, and they did this training session where the guy teaching us remembered half of the room's names and didn't even bother asking my half of the room. And later on in the day when he was speaking to them, it was, oh, Sarah, how are you doing? Oh, Louise, how are you doing? And it made the other half of the room that I was on feel really ignored. So it's making that point of not just checking in with someone for the sake of it, but I always, if I am checking in on someone, it's, I watched this film the other day and I think that you'll really like it. And people respond better to that if you see them as a person rather than a figure. That's what I've always been taught, and that's what I've always found.
Or as a problem to try and help fix as well. Yeah,
actually take interest in a person because you're interested in them, not just because you feel that you have to.
I think your clients will truly feel really, really special and touched when, you know, we're eventually allowed to go back into the barbershops, with you nurturing the relationships kind of like that. That's really lovely. We're getting a lot of love on the chat, a lot of from your Cresswell Barber Co team.
My gang. Hi gang.
And we've also got a message from James Deere, who agrees with Bethan about identity, and he says, for myself, no, not so much the loneliness and disconnection from people, but being a barber is who I am. Without that, who are you and what do you do? And when you're no longer able to be who you are, which I know is something that both of you have touched on a lot, about that identity, and without doing your job, the thing that you love.
I know James really struggles with that. James really struggles, bless him. But you have to remember that you're you, and we love you for who you are, not the fact that you're just a barber. Not that you're just a barber. But he knows what I mean. He's more than just that.
I think that phrase, identity is so much more than what you do. It's who you are, and that's identity is who you are. And he will be, you know, loved by friends and a son and a sibling, maybe. You know, you're so much more than just what you do. And I think that for me is almost, that's the internal change that would be so helpful to kind of stand your feet firmly in the ground of all that you are, and all of the parts of you that your acceptable bits and your not acceptable bits. It's like you're so much more than, you know, what you do. You have more to you than that, and that's what I would encourage you to dig into and rediscover the other parts of you that want to have a bit of a voice that aren't your barber bits, maybe.
And we've got a message from Natalie.
He
says, she's telling you off, Bethan. No, I'm joking. She says it's hard being a barber because you want to help and listen to clients, but I find I take their energies, which are sometimes negative, with me when I get home. What would you recommend we do as barbers to leave our clients' problems at work, but still be there for our clients who are sometimes also friends as well?
Yeah, great question. I think it's really a challenge to put down something really important that you've heard or something that stirred you. I think what I would suggest is, before you put it down and leave it behind, I would wonder what it is about it that has really touched you, why that has touched you. If there's something that you need to sort of do some work on or look at? Because often the thing that touches us most is the thing we perhaps struggle the most with, or perhaps have some experience of in our past. So I would definitely give it a little bit of thought, and then I would pop it on I have a little shelf that I pop my bits on, and I think, okay, well, I've had a little think about that, and yeah, I'm going to put it up there, and then I might get it down and have another little look, but actually I'm going to now turn my attention. Is there anything I can do about that for now? If there isn't, I'll tend to do can I do anything about it now? If I can, okay, I will. And if I can't, and I've processed it a little bit and worked out where I am with it, I then will do something else. I will move on and do something different to just settle my mind, or do a bit of self-care, or a bit of exercise, or paint rocks, leave them in different places, or do a jigsaw. I will just do something that calms myself down around it. But I definitely would explore what it was that made you want to hold it in the first place.
I love this idea of a mental shelf.
Mm.
But I feel like I'm just thinking about my own brain. I'm like, oh God, I think I've got a mental cupboard. I need to make my shelf more accessible. And not.
I think I've got a library.
Oh, nice. Nice. And is it alphabetized, your library, Bethan? Or
no, it's the most chaotic library you'll ever see. No organisation whatsoever, just dumped on the shelf, and we'll just find it when we can find it.
So many analogies. And Bethan, do you have a kind of response to Natalie's kind of thing, which to me reminds me of a sponge? Like, as barbers, I feel you're all sponges, and you kind of absorb everyone's emotions in the chair, and then going home must be such a difficult process to kind of decompress a bit. Have you got any tips for that decompression?
I know well, myself and Nat are probably not the worst people for it in the shop, but we do carry what happens to our customers, and we do get involved in their lives quite a lot. I think the same thing as Louise: acknowledge what has happened and what the person has spoken to you about, and how it's made them feel and how it's made you feel. But try to not forget about it. You can still revisit it and things like that, because it's good to acknowledge that it has made you feel a certain way. But try, like Louise said, just to look after yourself and understand why it's affected you as well. But it is very, very hard, especially if you have multiple clients who are going through hard times and they are back to back, and you kind of think, I just need someone that's like a bit happier. Yeah. Like, come on. Because it does affect you. It's very hard to get the balance of taking on what people are going through and not being affected by it.
I think I just add in there that I think, we talk about mind and body as separate things, and actually I think they're one thing. If you've heard something in your day from a client, it will sit somewhere in your body.
Definitely.
Your memory, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and I think it's so true. And actually a very, very quick and simple breathing exercise, which I'm sure you'll do, it's sort of like, breathe in and out 2 or 3 times, really, that's all, just slowly in, out, and then just go into your body and just try to focus on where you feel the greatest sensation. And post clients, that might sit on your shoulders, and just breathe into that and wonder about it and think, well, what's happening there? And I think you can really release very quickly and become aware of what's happening in your body. And that's sort of key really to understanding your own process, and do that before you slug down a large gin and tonic that sends the sensations away. And I'm speaking of my own. not averse to a gin and tonic, but I'll try not to soothe my feelings through it. Yeah.
I love it. So on your shelf, your mental shelf, Louise, is the gin and tonic next to the difficult to process emotions.
Yeah.
What's in your library, Bethan?
Candles and bath bombs and anything you can possibly think of to do with crystals, and the list goes on.
Like a library / spa / healing room.
Yeah.
Very cool. So hopefully the industry is going to be getting back to work in spring, or as soon as possible, as long as it takes, but hopefully soon. So in terms of beating burnout and going back to a different pace of life, Louise, have you got any tips for barbers returning to work?
Yeah, I think really try to hold on to some of the things that you've learned. So we all have become much more aware of our limits and what we can do to make ourselves feel better, and what gets us down or gets us stressed. You know, we have had time and space to look at that, and I think we've become really aware of it. And that doesn't just mean leaving that behind. It's like bring that knowledge with you and work in a healthier, more mindful way. You know, ask for what you need, keep asking for what you need. And actually the really important thing is bring each other along with you. So if we do it in community and we do it together, you know, we can't do this on our own. So when Megan started off at the beginning, the aloneness thing and the loss of identity thing, I think that's kind of like being out there, you know, outside of the team. I think when you're back inside the team, you know, really show yourself and deepen those relationships, because I think that's where we are at our healthiest, when we're in good relationship with ourselves and with others. Yeah.
And Bethan, what was it like going back to work after the first 2 lockdowns? Was that a hard process to manage?
Well, obviously I spoke to you after going back in the first one, and I wasn't having a good time. Going back in the second one, I don't even think it, like, I think that was fine. That was like having a holiday, that second lockdown. The hardest part of going back for that was realizing that it was kind of only us and hospitality that were really affected by that one personally.
Yeah.
And going back this time round, it's going to be easy in the sense of we know what we're walking into. The first time we had no idea what was happening with like PPE and timings and things like that. This time around we're obviously a bit more prepared. But I think definitely, like Louise said, it's knowing yourself and what you've learned. So for myself, and during this whole thing, I have definitely learned that I take on far too much. I am a people pleaser. I am the guilty one of being in the shop till 11 o'clock at night, trying to fit people in and skipping my lunch breaks to squeeze that last kid in or something. And I know I can't do that, because it affects me not only mentally, but like Louise was saying, your physical health as well. But I think a good thing to remember for going back into it when we do eventually reopen is to just, one, be kind to yourself, but be kind to each other. And I would advise every single person going back that's in the beauty industry and the hair industry to be prepared for some difficult conversations with their clients as well, because people are really going through it. So just do your best to prepare for that. I did that by taking part in the Barber Talk with Tom Chapman. It's a great course. So did Marie, who works in the shop. I highly recommend everyone doing that, because it makes you think about yourself as well, but also will help you be there for your team as well as your clients when you go back.
Oh, amazing. And there's been so many great recommendations from both of you today in terms of books and apps and like Barber Talk from Bethan there. So we'll definitely compile a list and pop it under the post for anyone that's missed anything that we've said in conversation. I've kind of been trying to scribble things down as we're talking, because I'm like, oh, want to try that, want to try this. Thank you so much, both of you, for what's been a great session. For me personally too, I've loved all this shelf chat and the library stuff, and it's definitely made me think, but I hope that it's actually benefited people that are watching live today as well, and people that kind of watch this back later. And if anyone does have any other questions, please feel free to contact us, and I can always forward them on to Louise or Bethan, who I'm sure would love to help out and answer in any way that they can.
Yes.
And thank you so much. It's been a great all-star female cast today.
Great pleasure. And yeah, final word would really be, if you're struggling, reach out. Do not struggle on your own, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I would say, especially if you're a barber, reach out to other barbers, not just your own team. Everyone that is in the industry is going through it. Even reach out to people from hairdressing and beauty, because they're doing the same.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh no, thank you both. That's so brilliant, and we've just popped the link to Barber Talk as well in the chat there. Thank you so much for joining us today, and you guys have been absolutely brilliant. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and it's been great to see your faces.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.